school was approached to be a model.
Yeah, but I'm glad I never pursued that. And if I went to a fortune teller and they told me that this was going to be my life, I would.
In the land of kings and queens, where love often takes a backseat to politics and protocol, a fairy tale romance blossomed that would redefine royalty as we know it. Queen Rania, the elegant and captivating First Lady of Jordan, captured the heart of King Abdullah II with a single glance, but her modesty and grace led her to refuse his advances until he learned the ultimate tool of persuasion, the art of cooking. Sounds amusing, right? Grab a seat because we are about to show you how King Abdullah II learned to cook for her after she rejected him. It is a big deal to say no to a king, and another thing for the king to learn how to cook to persuade you. This was the story of the king and queen of Jordan before their union. But the question is, how did they meet? And why did Queen Rania reject him at first? How it all started. In August 1992, Abdullah II bin Al-Hussein assumed leadership of the Second Royal Armored Battalion. Over 2 months, he and his troops participated in demanding drills and practical exercises. They resided in a desert encampment, residing in tents, adapting to the challenging environment without cessation. Their facilities were basic, and they adjusted to making do with only the necessities. For example, they utilized a basic hose attached to a water reservoir for bathing, utilizing solar energy to warm the water. Despite the Spartan conditions, the training successfully wrapped up. Getting to the end of their duties, the commander of the brigade sanctioned a single evening of leave for the officers. Abdullah, who was keen on getting quick comfort, changed out of his military attire into a simple shirt and lightweight shoes before embarking on a trip to Amman. Upon his arrival at home, Abdullah's sister, Aisha, called to know why he had not joined them for dinner after returning. Feeling tired, Abdullah expressed his desire for a warm bath and a comfortable bed, yet Aisha persisted, highlighting the extended duration since their last meeting and the brevity of the planned reunion. Having subsisted on a diet primarily consisting of beans and canned spaghetti for the past 2 months, Abdullah found it challenging to turn down the prospect of a proper meal. Upon Abdullah's arrival at Aisha's residence, he had signs of sunburn, resembling a toasted loaf, due to his 2-month stint in the desert. In his haste to depart from the camp, he failed to recognize that his sister was entertaining dinner guests. Among the visitors was a friend of Aisha's who was employed at Apple Computers in Amman. This lady had in tow a companion named Rania Al-Hussein. Upon encountering Rania, Abdullah was captivated by her beauty. Rania, then almost 22 years old, had spent her formative years in Kuwait before her family, of Palestinian descent, decided to move to Jordan during the Gulf War. Her father, intending to retire, led the family to settle in Jordan. Rania had attained her business administration degree from the American University of Cairo. Although their discussion at dinner was short, Abdullah was impressed by her intelligence, grace, and self-assured demeanor. Throughout the evening, Abdullah became increasingly fascinated by Rania and recognized the need to meet with her again. Nonetheless, he encountered difficulties in determining the best approach to reconnect with her. Trial and rejection. Eager to reconnect with Rania, Abdullah contacted her at her workplace in a formal manner. He expressed his desire to arrange another meeting with her. Rania responded cautiously, mentioning that she had received information about him. She hinted at potential negative perceptions she had heard about Abdullah. In response to her claims, Abdullah acknowledged her concerns by stating that he did not claim to be perfect. He reassured her that a significant portion of the rumors she had heard were likely baseless. Rania still had her doubts, however. Abdullah was determined to persist. He sought the assistance of their common acquaintance, Tawfiq Kawar, to approach her at her workplace and persuade her of his sincere motives. Despite the intervention of his friend, Rania maintained a sense of doubt, rejecting Abdullah's credibility due to perceived bias. Undaunted by obstacles, Abdullah learned of Rania's fondness for chocolate. He decided to give her a box of Belgian chocolates in an effort to gain her affection. Following an unexpected dinner he prepared for her in November, she eventually agreed to go out with him. Reflecting on his actions afterwards, Abdullah mentioned, "Initially, my drive to acquire culinary skills stemmed from my strong desire to connect with her, but eventually I came to view cooking as a method of unwinding." Before we proceed, what were these negative rumors of King Abdullah which made Rania reject him? Let's delve into his early years to find out. King Abdullah II's early years and military career. Abdullah II, born on January 30th, 1962, in Amman, Jordan, comes from a distinguished lineage as the son of King Hussein and British-born Princess Muna Al-Hussein. He was named after his great-grandfather, Abdullah I, who established modern Jordan. Abdullah belongs to the historic Hashemite dynasty, which has overseen the governance of Mecca for centuries and has been ruling Jordan since 1921. The Hashemites hold the distinction of being the oldest ruling dynasty in the Muslim world, tracing their ancestry back to Fatima, the daughter of Prophet Muhammad, and her spouse Ali. At first, Abdullah was set to be the next in line for the throne, but his uncle, Prince Hassan, took over in 1965 because of political turmoil. Abdullah started his schooling in Amman before going to renowned institutions in England and the U.S., like Eaglebrook School and Deerfield Academy, where he even spoke at the 2000 graduation ceremony. Abdullah has 4 brothers and 6 sisters, with 7 of them being half-siblings from his father's side. His family's strong connections to Jordan and dedication to the nation have positioned him as a key player in the country's lasting impact. He embarked on his military profession at the Royal Military Academy Sandhurst in the United Kingdom in 1980, while holding a rank as a training officer in the Jordanian Armed Forces. Following his completion of training at Sandhurst, Abdullah was appointed as a second lieutenant in the British Army and carried out duties as a troop commander in the 13th/18th Royal Hussars, now known as the Light Dragoons, for a year in both Britain and West Germany. Abdullah enrolled at Pembroke College, Oxford, in the year 1982, where he successfully completed a specialized 1-year course focused on Middle Eastern affairs. Upon his return to Jordan, Abdullah joined the Royal Jordanian Army, initially serving as a first lieutenant, and later progressing to the role of platoon commander and assistant commander of a company within the 40th Armored Brigade. In pursuit of further professional development, Abdullah undertook a free-fall parachuting program in Jordan and then completed the Armored Officers Advanced Course at Fort Knox in 1985. Subsequently, he assumed leadership as the commander of a tank company within the 91st Armored Brigade, holding the rank of captain. Additionally, Abdullah gained practical experience by serving with the Royal Jordanian Air Force's anti-tank helicopter wing, where he underwent training to operate Cobra attack helicopters. In 1987, the prince pursued advanced study and research in international affairs at the Edmund A. Walsh School of Foreign Service at Georgetown University in Washington, D.C. Following his studies, he returned to Jordan in 1989 to assume the role of assistant commander of the 17th Royal Tank Battalion, where he was later promoted to the rank of major. Subsequently, in 1990, he attended a staff course at the British Staff College, and in the following year, he served as the Armored Corps representative in the Office of the Inspector General of the Jordanian Armed Forces. In 1992, he took on the command of a battalion in the 2nd Armored Cavalry Regiment and was then elevated to the rank of colonel in 1993, during which time he led the 40th Brigade. In 1994, Abdullah took control of Jordan's Special Forces and other esteemed units as a brigadier general, reorganizing them into the Joint Special Operations Command in the following 2 years. He was promoted to the rank of Major General, participated in a Defense Resources Management program at the American Naval Postgraduate School, and led a specialized Special Forces mission targeting fugitives in 1998. The mission was said to conclude triumphantly, with his accolades being celebrated on the thoroughfares of Amman. Now let's look at Abdullah's right as king and what he did. King Abdullah II's reign. Abdullah accompanied his father on various diplomatic missions, including engagements with Soviet and American leaders overseas. While serving as King Hussein's regent throughout the 1990s on occasion, Most of this responsibility was shouldered by Hussein's younger sibling, Crown Prince Hassan. In 1987, Abdullah headed his father's delegation to Moscow for negotiations. He frequented the Pentagon in Washington to advocate for heightened military support for Jordan. The prince traveled alongside his father to meet with Hafez al-Assad in Damascus and Saddam Hussein in Baghdad prior to the onset of the Gulf War in 1990. In 1997, Abdullah oversaw military drills during visits by Israeli military officials to Jordan, and in 1998, he was entrusted with personally delivering a message to Muammar Gaddafi. King Hussein traveled frequently to the United States for medical treatment following his cancer diagnosis in 1992. Upon his return from a 6-month absence in late 1998, he publicly criticized his brother Hassan for his handling of Jordanian affairs, alleging that he had exceeded his constitutional powers as regent. On January 24, 1999, just 2 weeks before his passing, Hussein made a surprising decision to designate his son as his heir apparent, a move that caught many, including his son Abdullah, off guard as they had assumed he would pursue a military career. The monarch passed away from complications related to non-Hodgkin lymphoma on the 7th of February 1999. His reign, lasting 47 years, coincided with 4 tumultuous decades marked by the Arab-Israeli conflict and the Cold War. Shortly after his father's demise was announced, Abdullah made an appearance at an urgent session of the Jordanian parliament. His 2 brothers, Hassan and Muhammad, walked in front of him as he entered the gathering. Using the Arabic language, he pledged the same oath that his father had taken nearly 50 years prior. "I solemnly swear by the Almighty God to uphold the Constitution and remain loyal to the nation." Addressing the assembly, Speaker of the Senate Zaid al-Rifai initiated the session with the recitation of Al-Fatiha, the opening chapter of the Quran, his voice reflecting emotion as he led the reading. He implored, "God, safeguard His Majesty. God, provide guidance and protection for him." The official ceremony for Abdullah's ascension to the throne was held on the 9th of June 1999. Subsequently, a gathering at Ragadan Palace was attended by 800 distinguished individuals following a procession through Amman by the 37-year-old king and his 29-year-old spouse, Rania, who at the time was the youngest queen globally. In his capacity as monarch, Abdullah possesses a broader scope of executive and legislative powers compared to typical constitutional monarchs. He serves as both the head of state and commander-in-chief of the Jordanian Armed Forces, and holds the authority to appoint the Prime Minister and security agency directors. The Prime Minister has the liberty to select his cabinet. The Parliament of Jordan comprises 2 chambers known as the appointed Senate and the elected House of Representatives, which function as a system of checks and balances on the government. Nevertheless, Freedom House notes that the majority of seats in the House are occupied by pro-palace independent members, making it exceedingly challenging for a political party to gain power solely through the electoral process. The Senate members are selected by the monarch, while the House of Representatives is elected directly by the people. When Abdullah assumed the throne as the 4th king of Jordan, there were doubts among observers about his ability to navigate the country's economic difficulties stemming from the aftermath of the 1990 Gulf War. He continued his father's moderate pro-Western stance, endorsing the 1994 peace treaty between Israel and Jordan. The transition of power also led to an increase in aid from the United States and Arab Gulf nations. In the initial years of his rule, when the population stood at 4.5 million, Abdullah reportedly made frequent incognito visits to personally assess Jordan's challenges. In 2000, he humorously remarked about these undercover visits to government institutions, stating, "The bureaucrats are terrified. It's great." Abdullah enforced a crackdown on the presence of Hamas in Jordan in November 1999, following requests from the United States, Israel, and the Palestinian Authority. This crackdown took place amidst peace negotiations between Israel and the Palestinian Authority. The king took action by deporting 4 Hamas officials to Qatar and prohibiting the group from engaging in political activities, leading to the closure of their offices in Amman. Unfortunately, the peace talks were disrupted by a violent Palestinian uprising known as the Second Intifada in September 2000. Consequently, Jordan experienced a decline in tourism, which is a key economic component of the country due to its limited natural resources. It is reported that Abdullah played a key role in trying to mitigate the political unrest. While on vacation in the Greek islands on the 23rd of June 2000, Abdullah received a warning from the director of Mukhabarat, the country's intelligence directorate, concerning a possible assassination attempt by Al-Qaeda. The plan involved targeting Abdullah and his family's rented yacht with explosives. Following the September 11th attacks in 2001 on American targets, Abdullah strongly denounced the terrorist acts. Jordan promptly responded to requests from the United States for assistance by implementing counterterrorism measures and maintaining a high state of alert. The country's intelligence directorate successfully thwarted similar terrorism plots the following year, targeting Western interests, including the American and British embassies in Lebanon. With the impending military action by the George W. Bush administration against Iraq on the grounds of Saddam Hussein possessing weapons of mass destruction, Abdullah expressed his opposition to American intervention. During a visit by American Vice President Dick Cheney to the Middle East in 2002, Abdullah cautioned about the dire consequences of a strike on Iraq, emphasizing the potential threat to the security and stability of the entire Middle East region. In March 2003, during a meeting at the White House with George W. Bush, Abdullah attempted to dissuade the president from initiating military operations in Iraq. The wartime hesitancy displayed by King Hussein in the 1990 Gulf War was perceived as aligning with Saddam Hussein, which resulted in Jordan's estrangement from its Arab allies in the Persian Gulf and the Western world. This stance led to an economic crisis due to the cessation of foreign aid and investments in Jordan. Despite his efforts to sway Bush's decision, Abdullah eventually distanced himself from domestic opposition. He permitted the deployment of American Patriot batteries in the Jordanian desert along the border with Iraq, but refrained from allowing coalition forces to launch an invasion from Jordan. Jordan had been benefiting from subsidized oil from Iraq under Saddam Hussein's regime, amounting to savings of approximately $500 million annually, similar to the amount of American aid provided to Jordan at that time. The 2003 Jordanian general election marked the inaugural parliamentary election during Abdullah's reign. Originally scheduled for 2001, the election was postponed by the monarch in light of regional political turbulence, a decision within his constitutional authority allowing a maximum delay of 2 years. This delay drew criticism from the principal Islamist opposition party in Jordan, the Islamic Action Front, associated with the Muslim Brotherhood, whom accused Abdullah of obstructing democratic processes. Inherited from his father in 1991, Abdullah faced a contentious, single, non-transferable vote electoral system, which had curtailed the influence of Islamic political factions following their attainment of 22 out of 80 seats in the 1989 elections. Ahead of the election, Abdullah issued a royal decree amending the election law to allocate 6 parliamentary seats specifically for women. In 2004, Abdullah introduced the term Shia Crescent to delineate a region under Shia dominance extending from Damascus to Tehran, excluding Baghdad, where sectarian politics were being advocated. Abdullah's cautionary statement garnered global attention, prompting him to clarify that he was alluding to a transformation in political allegiance rather than fostering sectarian divides. The accuracy of the king's observation was substantiated following the ascent of Shia leader Nouri al-Maliki to power in the Iraqi government in 2006 and subsequent occurrences. The founder of al-Qaeda in Iraq, Abu Musab al-Zarqawi, claimed responsibility for a terrorist attack in Amman on the 9th of November 2005, marking the deadliest incident in Jordan's history. During the attack, which targeted 3 hotels, one of which was hosting a wedding, 60 individuals lost their lives and 115 others sustained injuries. Prior to the assault, al-Zarqawi had issued a warning stating, "What is coming is more vicious and bitter." In 2006, al-Zarqawi met his demise in an airstrike with the assistance of Jordanian intelligence operatives. Islamic extremists display animosity towards Abdullah and Jordan due to the nation's peace agreement with Israel and its affiliations with Western countries. Subsequent to the heightened security measures undertaken by Jordan, no significant terrorist attacks have been reported within the country. In February 2007, Russian leader Vladimir Putin made his inaugural visit to Jordan, where he received a warm reception from King Abdullah. The two heads of state engaged in dialogue regarding the potential advancements in the Israeli-Palestinian peace negotiations, the ongoing developments in Iran's nuclear initiatives, and the escalating conflict in Iraq. In 2007, Abdullah founded King's Academy, the inaugural boarding school in the Middle East, as a gesture of gratitude for his educational experience at Deerfield Academy. To lead the institution, he enlisted Eric Widmer, the headmaster of Deerfield, which attracts students from various parts of the Middle East. In 2007, Jordan accommodated 800,000 Iraqi refugees who escaped the insurgency that occurred after the American invasion, a majority of whom have since repatriated back to Iraq. The parliamentary election in Jordan, held in November 2007, saw secular opposition factions criticize the government for exploiting the perceived increase in Islamism as justification for their authoritarian policies. King Abdullah of Jordan made history in 2008 when he became the first Arab leader to travel to Iraq following the American invasion of 2003. This visit occurred amidst fears among Sunni Arab nations about the expanding influence of Iran in Iraq. The Tunisian Revolution in December 2010, which resulted in the ousting of the country's president, sparked a series of protests in Egypt, culminating in the overthrow of President Hosni Mubarak by January 2011. This wave of demonstrations spread to other Arab countries, leading to civil conflicts in Libya, Syria, and Yemen. In Jordan, various opposition groups, including the Muslim Brotherhood, leftists, and retired army generals, staged protests across the nation. Responding to domestic unrest by February 1, 2011, King Abdullah dismissed the government led by Samir Rifai and committed to pursuing a democratic path. The protests in Jordan from 2011 to 2012 were primarily driven by grievances related to the troubled economy, such as high prices, extensive unemployment, and a relatively low quality of life. While some called for the abolition of the monarchy, the majority of protesters directed their frustration towards politicians perceived as undemocratic, corrupt, and unaccountable. Participants demanded the dissolution of the parliament elected 3 months earlier in November 2010, where pro-regime candidates secured a majority of seats. The Jordanian monarchy stood as the first Arab government to offer political compromises during the Arab Spring. Maruf Bakit was appointed as the prime minister, yet demonstrations persisted throughout the summer as he was seen as a conservative figure unlikely to advocate for substantial reforms. Discontent with the slow progress of reform prompted King Abdullah to dismiss Bakit's administration and name Al-Hussein to form a new cabinet. Hussein, however, resigned suddenly in April 2012, leading the king to appoint Fayez Tarana as an interim prime minister, marking the third governmental reshuffle in 18 months. In November 2012, the government decided to reduce fuel subsidies, which resulted in an increase in prices. This move was later reversed, but led to widespread protests throughout the country. In response to the unrest, the regime implemented reforms, including amending a significant portion of the Constitution and establishing a constitutional court and an independent election commission. Abdullah then called for an early parliamentary election and tasked Abdullah Ensur with forming an interim government. During the January 2013 election, supporters of the regime emerged victorious as opposition groups opted to boycott the election. The Islamic Action Front had previously criticized the lack of true opposition representation in the election. Beginning in December 2012, the king released 7 discussion papers outlining his vision for democracy and reform in Jordan. In April 2014, the Islamic State of Iraq and the Levant, ISIL, a group associated with al-Qaeda that emerged earlier in 2014 after displacing Iraqi government forces from strategic cities, released an online video threatening to invade Jordan and harm Abdullah, whom they perceived as an adversary of Islam. An ISIL fighter proclaimed, "I have a message for the ruler of Jordan. We are approaching you with death and explosive devices," as he destroyed a Jordanian passport. During August 2014, numerous Iraqi Christians fled from ISIL and sought refuge in Jordanian churches. Shortly after Jordan became part of the international coalition against ISIL, in September 2014, the nation's security forces uncovered a terrorist scheme aimed at civilians in Jordan. Following this, Abdullah stated in an interview that the borders of Jordan with Iraq and Syria were highly secure. Towards the end of December 2014, a Jordanian F-16 fighter plane crashed near Raqqa, Syria, while on a mission. On February 3, 2015, a video was uploaded online showing the captured Jordanian pilot Muath al-Qasasbeh being burned alive in a cage. Jordan had been negotiating for al-Qasasbeh's release in January, with the terrorists demanding the release of Sajida al-Rishawi in exchange, a suicide bomber from the 2005 Amman bombings. Al-Qasasbeh's actions provoked widespread anger in Jordan, particularly as the king was on a state visit to the United States at the time. Upon his return to Jordan, Abdullah promptly authorized the execution of 2 imprisoned Iraqi jihadists, Sajida al-Rishawi and Ziad al-Karbuli, who had been previously sentenced to death, and they were executed early the following day. This decision was met with enthusiastic support from both the domestic and international communities. Acting as the commander-in-chief, Abdullah initiated Operation Martyr Muath, a series of airstrikes directed at ISIL targets in the subsequent week, focusing on weapons depots, training camps, and oil facilities. His retaliatory actions were commended online, where he was hailed as the Warrior King. Speculation emerged suggesting that Abdullah personally led these missions, although the government officially refuted such claims. In a January 2016 interview with the BBC, Abdullah expressed that Jordan is facing heightened challenges due to the influx of Syrian refugees. The king highlighted that more than 1 million Syrians have sought asylum in Jordan, leading to significant strain on the country's economy, infrastructure, and essential services. Abdullah warned that the current situation is unsustainable, stating that the pressure is building up and may lead to a breaking point in the near future. Historically, Jordan has been welcoming of refugees, including Palestinians in 1948 and 1967, Iraqis during the American invasion, and most recently Syrians, who now account for approximately 20% of Jordan's then population of 9.5 million. However, Abdullah acknowledged that the country is reaching its limits in providing support and assistance to the increasing number of refugees. The beginning of a beautiful relationship. Abdullah successfully prepared a homemade dinner consisting of authentic Japanese cuisine featuring chicken, prawns, and beef. Subsequently, they continued to meet and engage in frequent telephone conversations. They maintained a discreet relationship in order to avoid public scrutiny and prevent becoming the focus of gossip. As Abdullah's emotions grew stronger, he shared with his father, King Hussein, about meeting an exceptional woman whom he considered to be his soulmate. In honor of his birthday, Abdullah invited Rania to a dinner on January 30th. During the event, King Hussein conversed at length with Rania, seated beside her, and by the end of the evening he was deeply impressed by her intellect and attractiveness. After the departure of the guests, King Hussein contacted Abdullah to discuss the revelation of a secret and the timing for a meeting with her parents. However, he told his father to wait a while so he could confirm if she wanted him, privately asking for her hand in marriage. Shortly thereafter, the relationship between Abdullah and Rania progressed to a more significant level. Tal al-Ruman, a mountain located on the outskirts of Amman, held particular importance to Abdullah and was one of his preferred locations. This mountain was renowned for hosting one of the oldest sporting events in the Middle East, specifically a hill climb race initiated by Abdullah's father and his acquaintances in 1962. With the desire to introduce Rania to this significant place, Abdullah extended an invitation to her for a scenic drive to the mountain's summit. While conversing outside the vehicle, Abdullah admitted to foreseeing their relationship progressing towards marriage. Despite smiling, Rania chose to remain quiet. Abdullah interpreted her silence as consent and promptly informed his father of their discussion. Events began to unfold swiftly. In a span of 2 weeks, a meeting was scheduled for King Hussein to meet with Rania's parents. A traditional proposal and response. Upon his arrival at Queen Aliyah International Airport, Abdullah was surprised to be greeted by his father, a gesture that hinted at the gravity of the impending conversation between them. Abdullah quickly realized that his father was intending to assess his preparedness and commitment towards marriage. In Jordanian culture, a marriage proposal is a ceremonious occasion that includes important family members. The parents of Rania believed that Abdullah and his father were simply dropping by for a casual visit, unaware of King Hussein's intentions to formally propose on behalf of his son. When Rania's mother offered King Hussein a cup of coffee, he politely accepted but did not drink from it. This action held great significance. In Jordanian culture, it is tradition for the groom's family to abstain from consuming coffee until the marriage proposal has been officially made and accepted by the bride's family. Upon King Hussein's speech, he intricately commended the profound bond between Abdullah and Rania, highlighting the robustness of their collaboration and the significance of their forthcoming life together. Following careful deliberation, Rania's father granted his approval for the marriage. With the consent of both families, Abdullah was filled with joy. This critical juncture symbolized a noteworthy transformation in the relationship between Abdullah and Rania. The initial casual dinner at Aisha's home had transitioned into a significant and official dedication, solidifying their role in the future of the Jordanian royalty. The passing emotions of admiration that previously defined their relationship had developed into a lifelong commitment founded on mutual respect, common principles, and intellectual affinity. Their commitment represented more than just a personal achievement. It represented a partnership that would impact the future of the nation. Abdullah and Rania were now united not just by affection, but also by the duties and anticipations associated with their positions. Collaboratively, they were on the cusp of molding the future of the Jordanian monarchy for years to follow. If you enjoyed this video, like and subscribe, and also click the next video shown on your screen.